Hey!
Hi.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I guess most of you have heard by now, we have a new ebook out. We just released it this week. Leslie and I have been working on this ebook for some time now.
It has been a lot of work to put together, lots of late nights of research, but the result is very rewarding, not just for us, most especially for you, because you are going to benefit from the hours and hours of labor that we've put into putting this together. Right.
Now, today, I know some of you are curious. There's the question, I saw it here earlier about it already, about this new ebook. It's called, Was Jesus Secretly a Magician? The 3 Lost Baptisms of Jesus Revealed. Well, as you can imagine, this ebook showing up is a big deal. Right. Let me just take that off here real quick. So, first of all, let's ask the most obvious question. What the heck does this have to do with the Golden Dawn?
Well, let me show you.
As a matter of fact.
What we have here is the work of Florence Farr, Egyptian Magic. Now, Florence Farr was quite a flamboyant soarer, and personally, she was my favorite. Of all the different ones in our historical past for our order, I look to Florence Farr when I look to a model of how...
Oh, Florence Farr is amazing.
She was a really, really skilled adept. And in this book, she waits until almost the very end. Okay, so she's got a lot of opening for the punchline. And the punchline is the 3 baptisms.
The secret baptisms of Jesus.
They are actual.
So, you see, these baptisms have been with us in the Golden Dawn since almost the beginning.
Yes.
It's just as this is something that has not received a lot of attention, and better that way until now, because now's a really good time for all of this to come out.
That's right. It is. Because
so for those of you who might be interested in this book, you can get it in reprint. It's by Florence Farr. It's called Egyptian Magic. But you can get now, Florence Farr made a few changes. I mean, she adapted a few things. So in the new ebook we have given you these 3 secret baptisms of Jesus very faithfully to the original manuscript. Now, today, now that we finally come out with something that's very substantial so that we can put, some really meat on the bones of our morning rituals, today we're in a position where we can tell you really a lot more about it.
Yes. So, where would we like to start? Would you like to start with?
I think probably the best place to begin is with the connection with the Golden Dawn.
Okay.
Because, all right, first of all, let me tell a little story.
Right.
Try reimagining Christianity in a different way if you could, just accepting the fact that Jesus Christ was probably the best magician that ever lived. He was amazing. This guy could do really incredible stuff, and that fast. A lot of questions come from that. How did he power his spells? How did that work? We take up all these questions in this new ebook. Was Jesus a secret magician? And the most important point is, Jesus was seen by the people of his time as a magus, a magician.
And this is really critical to understand. As an anthropologist, one of the things that I see going on in the world today that troubles me from a cultural standpoint is the fact that people have lost their understanding of context. Context is something that is absolutely critical in the human understanding toolkit.
Right.
Without context, logic is impossible.
Right.
It is the context in which we understand an event What are the other simultaneous events happening? What is the time period in which it occurs? What are the norms and attitudes, the mores and mores of the people who are experiencing the event being historically described?
So in a certain way, it doesn't really matter how we see Jesus. For this particular line of inquiry, it matters how the people of his time saw him.
And what is significant is that his crucifixion was based on Roman evidence that he was a practicing magician.
And there's a lot more. You'll find the whole evidence presented in the new ebook. Take a look at it. You're going to really enjoy it. I'd like to move quickly to 1897.
That is a jump.
Let's think about this. Okay, 1888, the Golden Dawn was founded. That was the very beginning of Isis Uranian Temple. And you had Woodman and Westcott and Mathers that were there together, and they opened the temple there for the first time in London, and the rest is history. These are the early origins of the Golden Dawn, and most of you are familiar with them. 1892, McGregor Mathers founded the Inner Order, the Second Order, the Rosicrucian Adepts Circle.
Right.
And only 5 years later, right in the absolute heyday of the Golden Dawn, there was an amazing discovery in Egypt. The archaeologists rediscovered this amazing manuscript in 1897. Now, there's a kind of a cool story around this too, because it's just really fabulous the way the whole thing happened. There was this traveler, and his name was Bruce.
Bruce was a travel writer.
Yep, and he was traveling all over the place.
Yes, travel writing was actually a very popular literary form at that particular point in time during the 1890s. A lot of people, a lot of means of travel were opening up for the first time. Far and distant lands were becoming closer, and people who were not in the military, the government, or the university system now had access to international travel and contact with tribal peoples, which had never really happened before. And so these travel journals that people were writing were just devoured by the Victorian populace, who was hungry for the same type of travel.
Yeah, and Robert Bruce wrote one of these journals. He was traveling all through Egypt.
Yes, and part of what made his writing so spectacular was the fact that he was there when things happened.
And then, on this particular day in 1897, according to Bruce, he witnessed as they brought it out in the village of Thebes as it was recovered, what has become known as the Bruce Codex. Now, the Bruce Codex is Bruce 96 today. Yeah, I'm almost certain of it. And it's in the Bodleian Library, and it's in very bad condition. It's in very bad condition. But, nonetheless, in my opinion, as well as the opinion of S.L. McGregor Mathers and the adepts in the know of the day of the Inner Circle, it is perhaps the most important manuscript on earth. And the greatest discovery of all time.
And this is because it is purported to be the actual teachings, the secret teachings that Jesus gave his most trusted disciples. And by his most trusted disciples, I mean Mary Magdalene. And there are extensive passages of she and he having conversations on doctrinal matters. It is...
The Magdalene mysteries are very important, in fact. In order to put this thing in its proper perspective, the very first thing we have to consider is that Jesus wasn't the only magician of his time. There were others.
Oh, there were a lot of other magicians.
Apollonius of Tyana was famous. Absolutely famous.
Of actually a higher status, because he happened to be of Alexandrian origin.
Right.
And that gave him a little bit of an elevated status over anyone else who came from anywhere else, because Alexandria was deemed to be the center of culture in that period of time.
But the church didn't like this. The way that the way that things began with the early Christian church, it was a problem. I mean, you can't really have a guy running around that is doing all of these miracles in a world where people see him as a magician, because this is not the first time they have seen something like this, you know? And so you can't have be trying to convert people to this new religion, and they're saying, oh, you know, he's just a magician, you know, whatever. So
Which is exactly what they said.
Which is exactly what they said.
They said, oh, well, hey.
His reputation was as a magician.
You know.
People came to see the miracles.
It's great that he can heal all these cats, but so can Apollonius. So what have you got that's different? That was a big question.
In any case, in order to solve the problem, the early church got rid of magic. It's that simple. I don't know any other way to say it except that they decided to solve the problem of Jesus the magician for their own missionary zeal by completely eliminating the magic of Jesus from the gospel.
Let me illuminate this a little more for you. Imagine for a moment, we are 2,000 years back. Women are property. Only certain men have actual rights. Most people that you see are slaves. And in this milieu, you have people who worship Zeus, people who worship Hecate, people who worship Thoth. You have a multitude of religions.
Right.
All of them practicing magic of a flavor. You have a Jewish community that also has a type of magic that is practiced, but it is frowned upon.
Right.
And now you have this person who was raised as a Jew stomping about, blabbing about magic, which is something that is distinctly pagan. And when the proto-Christians were trying to divide themselves off as a unique and distinct group, separate from the Judaism that their originator practiced, and also separate from the pagan milieu in which everything occurred, because paganism was the dominant religious current of the time, they chose a very radical path. And that path was to remove magic from Christianity.
This is a very, very old discussion, and I'm sure that, you know, that not everyone in the Golden Dawn and Rosicrucian community agrees with my point of view, because there are certainly among Rosicrucians those who are mystically oriented and want absolutely nothing to do with magic.
And that is fine. It is a legitimate path.
It's fine if that's what you're interested in, but that's also to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, think about it. The rediscovery of the magic of Jesus Christ. Is that not something absolutely phenomenal? Is that something you want to just, you know, toss away like that?
In fact, this is what makes it interesting to a pagan like me. There is nothing else that could bring me to actually consider the teachings of Jesus except magic. Now, this is interesting, and this is very interesting, because not only was it magic, it was the most powerful magic that had ever been seen on Earth up to that time. Yes, it was similar to other magics other people were doing, but what the devout believers of the day countered to the Roman critics was that, yes, Apollonius of Tyana can do miracles when it comes to healing. However, he has not yet raised the dead.
Right.
And this was a very important distinction, because it is also upon that distinction that the Christ figure moved from being simply human to being godlike.
See, this is the whole deal. As orthodoxy was forming, they had to get rid of that magic for a whole lot of reasons. It was for them more than a pebble in their shoe. It was the pink elephant in the room.
Yes.
You know, and everybody saw it. Now, and not only for that, but perk your ears, because this is really something important. They not only wanted to get rid of every trace of magic because of the fact that they wanted, you know, to convert everyone to their new religion and bring them under the authority of their own hierarchy, but also they wanted to set themselves up as intercessors between humanity and God. They wanted to impose their priesthood between all of us and the divine.
Yes.
And that is absolutely the antithesis of Jesus' magic. There's nothing that could be more opposite than that, because the magic of Jesus Christ is to completely open your contact with divinity.
And this is interesting because for those of us who were raised in a traditional Christian household, that was absolutely not the case. We're used to having to go through a priest, which is why those of us
you were raised Catholic.
I was raised Catholic.
Right.
And I turned away from the church primarily because they did not admit women to the priesthood.
Right.
When I figured that out at 7 years old, I was done with the church.
That was it for him.
Forget it.
Right.
And that's when I actually started exploring paganism by talking to trees and patches of clover, as a child is wont to do.
Right.
But that my experience, I'm sharing it with you because I've also found that this is the experience of so many people who turned away from the faith of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. They turned away because what they were looking for was magic, the magic that is inherent to the system and that was removed by the
I always certainly felt like something was missing. I was raised Christian only. I was raised Protestant. Leslie was raised Catholic. And for me, it seemed that in the Protestant version of Christianity, there was something missing there too. I always somehow, it's amazing really, I always somehow envied the disciples. I wanted to be them. I wanted to be there with him. I wanted to be close by. I wanted to experience the real thing. I wanted to know the real message, because how are we supposed to find it from this book 2,000 years later? I knew somehow already as a kid, intuitively, that Jesus' message was not only a message for the multitudes, for the masses, but there was also a special message reserved exclusively for the disciples.
And this is what makes it interesting to me.
Right, because of course there was an inner message, an esoteric message, a magical message.
A message meant for those who were ready for something more.
As he always said, those who have eyes to see or those who have an ear to hear. Not for everyone, but for those who have an eye to see, for the elect, for those who are ready for the message. Yesterday we released this brand new ebook, Was Jesus the Magician? Give you the basic background of the rediscovery of the lost books of Yahweh, how it happened, why they were repressed, why it is that the magic of Jesus was nearly destroyed and wiped from the face of the earth, and the miracle by which it survived. How we only have one precious manuscript of this ancient knowledge, and that's truly all there is left. Well, maybe in the Vatican they have it, but they're not about to give us that to fill in the little gaps that we've found. So be sure to make sure you download this. You don't want to miss this. You can get it for free for now at thesecretsofjesus.com. Thesecretsofjesus.com. Also find our daily ritual live stream.
That's right. Every day, starting at precisely sunrise Pacific time, you are invited to experience first-person shooter magic you'll find nowhere else on the web.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's not only unique in the way that it's presented, where you're live right in the middle of the action of the ritual, but what's even cooler about it is the ritual is written in the first-person perspective of Jesus Christ. Check that out. This comes from a manuscript that archaeologists found in Egypt. And they say that it comes from very, very, very early Christians, but the Christians themselves, those early Christians, say it was actually written by Jesus and was the secret magic he taught his disciples.
Regardless of who wrote it or who practiced it, we have picked it up, dusted it off, and we are taking it for a test drive, and you are in the passenger seat for the whole thing.
You bet. And it's really quite amazing. You're going to check it out. I mean, until now, after it was discovered, this manuscript has been in the hands of scholars. This is the first time it's really in the hands of magicians and being brought out and brought back to life. So check us out every morning at sunrise.
Are you familiar with the Rosicrucian with what's his name? He's popular in the States. He's the president or the from the Golden Dawn. What's his name?
Oh.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
Have David Griffin.
I saw an email yesterday that he sent out about, there's a magical war going on.
Demons of the infernal realm. All of them.
There is really a magical war going on. There is a guy called David Griffin who is heading all these magicians.
David Griffin is S.L. McGregor Mather's present successor.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
I'm Golden Dawn Imperator David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
There's a magical war going on.
So there is really a magical war going on.